Hey everybody, new podcast out with my buddy Dave Nelson. Dave's someone I've known for a long time and loved his vulnerability coming on the podcast to share his story of being an entrepreneur, getting into tech sales, and kind of the back and forth throughout his career between those two things. And then ultimately his calling to come back to high school that we both share as our alma mater, and just what that's meant to his life and his balance. So great example of beers and careers and how non-linear career paths and the importance of the experiences really help people find their true passion and what they do every day and love what they do. So check it out. It's an awesome podcast. At the end, we kind of riff a little bit on the current state of our country and both agree that things have a different look and feel to them in 2025 than they have over the last 20 years. So interested to hear your thoughts across the board and enjoy the listening. Well, Mr. Dave Nelson, we're live.
Mr. Mark Agnestelli.
Yes.
Did I pronounce it correctly?
Augustinelli.
Augustinelli.
It is not phonetically accurate at all.
I like the way you just said it better. That was passed on.
I know, you know.
Augustinelli.
Yes.
That is actually really a beautiful last name.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I do remember being, I don't know the age, I'm going to go with 11 as a guest. I remember like coming home from school and being like, Dad, how do I say my last name?
Yeah.
And finally getting the lesson. So he's like, it really should be a U.
But my question for you is, did you withhold that during your days at Severian? Because I felt like I said it wrong all these years, and this is the first time I'm really hearing of
You know,
Augustinelli.
it's one of those things where I think as I'm like 30 and on, I started correcting
To appreciate
people.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like when people said it wrong before, I would be like, it's not easy. And like, it's completely fine. And now it's like a joke, you know, and someone like pronounces it right. I'm like, pretty close, but it's Augustinelli.
That's awesome.
Rarely do you.
It's Italian, right?
Very Italian.
Nice.
Yes. But hey, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate
my pleasure,
it.
Man.
Dave Nelson, we were connected through the beautiful gift of Severian
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Yes.
Because when did you graduate?
2002.
Yeah, so you're 2 years older than me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was 04. Okay, cool. Yeah.
But we share some like sibling friends. And
We do, yeah. And like most things in greater Boston or the Severian community, the ties are numerous and deep, right?
I was literally at an open house on Saturday, and the guy's like showing us around, and he's like, he actually did the flip himself, and I'm like, oh, cool. I'm like, did you grow up in this area? He's like, no, I grew up in Dedham. And I go, oh, did you go to Dedham High School? He goes, no, I went to Severian. And I'm like, I went to Severian. It's like always.
It's crazy.
It's like an ever presence.
It is. It's a phenomenal thing. Before we dive in, I got to tell you one quick funny story. Open house. My parents, Severian was never part of the plan for me.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know about it. And well, if it was, I don't think it was. I think it just happened naturally when I was in that 7th, 8th grade thing.
Yeah.
But I remember my parents being like, by the way, we're going to the Severian open house tomorrow. You got to go. And I remember putting up like the most ridiculous fight. Like, I don't want to go to school with all boys. That's stupid. All my friends are here. You know, probably the typical stuff a 14-year-old say. And my dad or my mom just gave me just humor me. Probably my mom. Just humor me. Clearly, we support you. Give us an hour.
Yeah.
Go to the thing. Let us know. I remember sitting down in the auditorium. I'll never forget it until the day I die. And they opened, at that time, they opened with a video montage of what life was like at Severian. And about 5 minutes into the thing, they just start showing sports teams winning championships. And I remember elbowing my dad, being like, you got me. I'm in. Now I'm in.
Yeah.
And it was like, just like such a crystal clear memory.
Yeah.
It's funny how it happens, but
I remember looking at the Boston Globe and seeing this football player. I think I was in 8th grade. And it was like Severian Brothers, and he's going on to this college, and I'm like, that guy looks cool. I want to go there. But I'm sure for you, as it was for me, once I got there, there was so much more waiting for me. You know what I mean? It helped me become the man I am. You know, sports was kind of the vehicle that kind of got me there.
yes.
Right, and faith as well, but then also just the ability to kind of blossom in a way that I didn't think it was possible, you know?
100%. I tell my parents often, more often. It comes up more often than I would have thought as a almost 40-year-old. I'm always like, the best money you ever spent was Severian. I was like, that's the best money you ever spent on me, by far.
That's cool.
But before we dive into your background, because I
Yes.
love your background for the Beers and Careers.
Yes.
So this podcast is all about documenting nonlinear career paths. If you look at your LinkedIn, you go, ooh, tech, and then coaching, podcast, back to tech, and now back at the home of the
Severian.
Hawks, right?
That's right.
But before we get into it, just to let people get to know you a little bit, what was Dave Nelson's first paying job?
My first paying job. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, man. I think my first, like, hey, you're on payroll.
Yeah.
Was actually at a CVS.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was 14, and so I was only able to work 15 hours a week.
Okay.
And so, and it was the CVS in Medfield, Massachusetts.
Love it.
And yeah, I mean, that was my first paying. Like, I remember working
Yeah.
the register, and it was just so weird. It was like, you had like adults come up and be like, "Can you get me one of these things or that thing?" And you're like,
Yeah.
"I'm 14, man."
And didn't
You
they
know?
sell cigarettes at CVS still at that point?
Unfortunately,
too?
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
that's
was
right.
really
Yes,
awkward. It
that's
was
got to
really
be
awkward.
weird as
Yeah.
a 14-year-old.
Yeah, 14-year-old. This is kind of weird too, actually. But I was so excited for, like, they had like the break room, right? And you had to like punch in and out.
Yeah.
Like you had to like dial in to like get into the, and they had, for whatever reason, they had no, like, you could watch TV on your break. And I'm like, that's kind of cool. But the TV didn't work. But there was Miracle on 34th Street.
No way.
In
And you just watched it year round?
I just watched it year round.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was
That's
awesome. It was like summertime, and I'm like watching Miracle on
That's-
34th Street. It was the funniest thing. I'm like, this is better than nothing. You know,
Right,
you're a 14-year-old.
right.
You want to watch something.
Yeah,
So I'm
keep
like,
the time moving.
and next door to the CVS was a D'Angelo's.
Oh, you had a maid.
So I
You
got
had
like a
maid.
steak bomb
Yeah.
every day, and I'd go watch
Number
Miracle
9.
on 34th
What a rip.
Street.
Yeah, it's hilarious. Drinking Gatorade. You're
Oh,
living
yeah.
the life.
And then I
Living-
would leave there, and I go work out at Severian. So it
That's
all,
awesome.
it all ties back.
That's awesome. Do you have a favorite cocktail or drink? It is Beers and Careers. But
That's a great question, Mark. Well, you know, I would say soda water and lime.
soda water and lime. Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
Which I love, by the way. It's my
hey,
favorite.
cheers to our soda
Cheer-
water.
Cheers
So
to
this is
great Worcester-based company.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But you know, over the years, I kind of slowly just dialed it back, and I was dealing with an autoimmune issue, and alcohol really exacerbated it. So I just slowly kind of dialed it back, and then I was like, you know what? I kind of really like soda water
Yeah.
and lime.
Yeah, the way I feel too.
Yeah, it's great. I will say though, there's you know, I like the taste of beer.
Yeah.
But I would say that you know, there's that athletic brewing.
Yes.
So it's just
Yes.
like if you want to taste,
Yeah.
I'll have.
It's pretty good. My dad's into that too. Yeah, it's not bad. I can't believe how many of those they sell at the golf course now. It's crazy.
Oh yeah. It's like one of the biggest beers.
It's wild. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's incredible what they did.
come a long way too. You
It
know,
has.
it's just one of those things that, yeah, it
Product
just-
market fit.
Did
Which
totally.
you did, yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
How about quotes? You got a favorite quote?
You know, there's so many. One that stands out to me is "Preach, and if you must, use words." And it's by a saint called Saint Francis. And it's kind of like, you know, a lot of times people talk, but it's really more how you live your life.
Yeah, doing.
Yeah, like how you apply yourself every day. Is that inspiring yourself? Is it inspiring others? You know, I think talk's cheap.
Yeah.
So can you live the example that you strive to uphold?
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. I'm kind of in. I think actually, my path back to being a more spiritual person. Stoicism had a little bit of an effect on it. Reading a lot of Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, and one of them said, "Enough talk about what a great man is. Go out and be one."
That's a
And it
good
was
one
like,
too.
and I was like, "That's what that yours just reminded
It's
me of.
the
It's the
same-
same
it's the
thing.
same
Like,
essence, right?
Go be about it."
Absolutely.
Which I love.
I think there's something that universally speaks to the human heart
Yes.
about, you know, living a virtuous life, right? And,
Yes.
and I think a lot of the old sort of course, you know, you have scripture, but even the guys that were wrestling with it, right? And the Roman times who didn't really have a faith, they didn't really know, but they knew they needed something more than just simply, you know, conquering new lands
Right.
and whatever it was, right? There was always a void. And so, yeah, there's something really universal about virtue.
There is. There really is. I always ask people favorite book. I mean, I'm gonna say you're not allowed to say the Bible because I know we're reading that. Like, I'm thinking about like books you might recommend.
Yeah.
For people that you've really loved.
To be honest with you, I always bring up A Man's Search for Meaning by
Yes.
Viktor Frankl.
Unbelievable book.
Really awesome book. That's a book that my dad gave me, actually. Maybe I was 2 years out of college. And I actually felt like it was a book that I read front to back and just like really changed how I thought about things. And, you know, for those that don't know Viktor Frankl, he was a prisoner, Nazi prisoner camp survivor.
Yeah,
but he lived
Holocaust
till he was
survivor.
like 90.
He did.
99 or something like that. And lost everything. But the way he chose to sort of respond to the adversity was just was fascinating.
Yeah, his perspective in the face of adversity and
Yeah.
keeping it
Yeah, absolutely.
positive the whole way through.
Yeah, there are so many good. I mean, I like reading like autobiographies, like MLK's autobiography. Ben Franklin's got a great autobiography. There are so many good books, and there's a follow-on book to Man's Search for Meaning called "Prisoner of Your Thoughts."
I have not read that.
Yeah, it's a really, really, really good book, and yeah, and I think also it's actually fascinating. John Sullivan, Ambassador John Sullivan. He's a civilian in gravity. He was the ambassador of Russia. Wrote a book called Midnight in Moscow, and it's a very kind of current view on Russian U.S. politics.
Really?
Yeah, it's actually
That's-
fascinating.
that is
So
cool.
shout out to Ambassador John Sully Sullivan on that one.
That's very cool. I'll
yeah,
check that
yeah,
out
it's a good
too.
one.
I'm like one of those people who just keeps buying books, and then I get to like 30% of them. Like
Yeah.
you said, autobiography. It's like, oh, I was like, damn, I bought that Rockefeller autobiography and never got through it.
No,
I
I
just
mean-
read the Musk one.
Oh, okay. By
last
Walter
year.
Isaacson.
Yeah, it was pretty.
Yeah. I heard like a blurb about that one.
Yeah,
but-
it's worth it. It's like it's one of those ones where you just go, things are way more possible than I realized.
Sure.
I would say that was like one of my big takeaways of that book.
Yeah, I mean, some people kind of just force their will in certain scenarios.
They
right?
do, and he had a lot of things stacked against him, which I didn't realize either. So
Yeah, yeah.
really interesting. So let's dive in. Give me like the 3-minute overview. You graduate from Lafayette,
Yep.
and you get into tech sales. Classic.
Classic.
It's a classic New England dude thing to do. But you get into that, and like walk me through maybe your the quick career journey here.
Yeah, totally. When I left Lafayette, so going into my senior year at Lafayette, I had an internship actually with CVS of all things. Kind
No
of funny
way.
enough, yeah. You know, I was actually working in a warehouse, and it was fascinating. It was like 1 million square foot warehouse, and you know, it was a rotational program, so I was able to kind of see kind of the back end of how that all works. It's actually fascinating, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. And that was like
And even
20 years
crazier
ago.
now.
Yeah.
They're crazy. I mean, we live that world now.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
So you had, you know, people picking product. They had to pick it at a certain rate.
Right.
It was kind of nuts, and I couldn't keep up. Actually, I was like, oh my gosh. But I had a pretty serious accident that same summer. Almost lost my life, and so I went into my senior year having really missed this full summer internship, recovering from this accident, and you know, so I kind of went into my senior year with the hopes initially of like, hey, maybe this could lead to something more, like this potential job. With, hey, that kind of got put on pause. I'm going to head into my senior year. And I didn't fully know quite what I was going to do, to be totally honest with you. And I remember I did, you know, after my very first job at CVS, every subsequent summer, I actually did construction.
Yeah.
And so I worked for a general contractor, and I loved it. It was just like enjoyable. It was really hard work. You know, you're lugging shingles up to a roof. You're like breaking boulders with a hammer. Like it was kind of a little archaic, but it taught me a lot. And then I would go work out, and then I go get ready for football. You know, so I remember my biggest gains for sports were always in the spring because I was so exhausted in the summer from all that work. But that was kind
Interesting.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But I had like really strong like
Grip and stuff.
grip and everything like that. But so in college, I always had a sense of well, maybe I could do my own general contracting company. I thought it was really fascinating work. I love to build things. I love to kind of, even today I'm handy, and I just like to kind of use my hands, build stuff, see the kind of the art of the possible.
Yes. It's also very satisfying work.
Yeah.
I think manual labor because you get a quicker dopamine hit of your progress of the day.
and you just get a little better every time.
You do, yes.
You know, it's like
Yes.
there's something to be said for mastering something.
Yes.
Right? If you're like, hey, I actually feel like I'm a master in this domain, there's like a very satisfying, as you're saying, kind of reward loop there. And so so when I graduated college, I was like, man, like, I think I'm going to go for this. And so I started my own painting contracting company, and it took off, and it was doing pretty good. And then, you know, I had like 5-6 jobs going at once, and I'd sub them all out. And, you know, I was kind of like going to do quotes. Like I had a printer in my truck.
Wow.
So I could print, because back then you couldn't email yet. Right? I could be like, I'll email you the proposal, you can sign it right here. Like I had to print it in my truck. So I had like ink toner, like extra ink toner ready to go. And so I'm like printing off proposals in my truck, and I'd go right back in and try to get the job. And then I remember my first job, I landed, right? It was like a $5,000 job, and they wanted the whole outside of the house redone. And I'm like, all right, yeah, no, we can get this done. And I thought I had like a good idea of maybe like subbing it out to a painter. Like that was kind of the model. You land a job, then you find the subcontractors to go do the job. And I was filling up my gas at a gas station, and right next to me was this guy and his crew. I'm like, hey guys, looking for some extra work? They're like, yeah, sure, why not? I'm like, why don't we go check out this house? I just got the job. You can come do it. And those guys, I think, ended up doing like 6-7 houses for me. It was pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Serendipitous.
yeah, very serendipitous, and just kind of like a little bit on the fly, building it as you go, kind of building the plane as you fly type of thing. And so, but that was kind of my disposition. That kind of worked for me at the time, you know? And so, and then I remember like so summertime kind of came and went, fall, and then it started to really slow down. And I was like, man, I don't know if I want to do this. Like I had done a summer of it. It was a grind. You don't make a lot of money. You really have to know your margins. You have to kind of know, you know, might these guys go over my estimate? And I took the approach of like signing on the estimate versus it being purely an estimate. It was more like, here's a bill of goods, and I had them sign it before we did the work. So I would be losing money on certain jobs because I agreed to certain costs. You know, so there was a lot to learn in a small period of time. And then I'm like, you know, I don't know, like, what am I going to do in the winters? And we know up here, you know, it snows a lot or whatever. And so kind of for me, like, I just had that pivot moment where I was like, I don't know if this is what I actually should be pursuing at this point. And my buddy, Brian Boyson, who you're buds with his brother, Chris, he was at EMC. He's like, Dave, actually, they all called me Nelly, right?
Yes.
Nelly, I'm at EMC. You know, it's like a New England thing.
Yes.
So for some reason, we're not just called their last name. It's like it's your last name, and then it's converted to something else. Like Nelson becomes Nelly.
Yes.
You know, Augusta Nelly becomes, it could be Nelly too.
Yeah, well, yes.
Yeah, hey,
There was some
yeah,
Nelly,
yeah.
there was some Gus.
Yeah, Gus, exactly. But so for me, it was, it became a great opportunity to get my foot in. And, you know, I went in, and there was like 3-4 other Syrian guys there, believe it or not. And kind of once I hit the ground, I was like, wow, this is a really good match for me. You know, it was very intense, you know. By the time I left, sadly, it was like, I started with 14 people. By the time I left, there was 2 of us left out of that starting class. So it was huge attrition rate.
Sales.
Yeah. And, but, you know, I had the grit to hang in there, right, with sports, and then having done my own company. And then fast forward, you know, it kind of led from one to the next. It was like EMC. I actually did staffing for a small period of time.
That's right.
Yep. Which I actually loved, and I learned a ton. But then tech kind of came back calling and said, hey, come out to the field. So then I went to Dell. And then I had a great opportunity to join an early stage company that eventually went public called Nimble. And the interesting thing, so I just said that I was 2 of 14 people, right, that were left when I left EMC, myself and my other buddy. I turned down a job to be in the field for another tech company, and I went to staffing for a couple of years. But I kind of referred him. I said, hey, maybe you want to take this job. And he's like, maybe I do. And so he ends up taking the job.
This is at Nimble?
No, different. So as I'm leaving EMC,
okay.
I turned down a job to go to another tech company, and I went into staffing instead for a couple of years. And my buddy, him and me were the last of the 2. I said, hey, you should interview for this. He ends up getting it, right? So he ends up going there. I go staffing. his company goes public. They get bought by Dell. So I'm like, 3 years later, I'm like, Matt, I'm like, hey, bud, that's incredible, man. Like, I'm so proud of you, so happy for you. I'm like, you know, I think I might want to get back into it. And he's like, well, Dell's hiring. So then I go to Dell, right? 6 months later, he goes to Nimble, right? So now I'm at Dell doing okay. And then he's like, Nimble's doing awesome, man. You got to get over here. I'm like, all right, sounds good. Then I go to Nimble. And so, and then I kind of grew my responsibility there, right? I was like a rep initially, and then I was kind of the district manager for New England, upstate New York, Eastern Canada. And the team really kind of took off. I mean, it was really just me at first for New England. There was, I think, an upstate rep at the time. And then by the time I left, I think we had something like 5 sales reps in New England, 1 or 2 in upstate New York, 2 in Toronto, and 1 in Quebec. So it just took off.
Big, yeah.
And, you know, the business went from, I think when I took it over, I think it was like an $800K business. And then my first year we did like 3.5 million. And then by the time I left, it was about a $25 million business.
Wow.
In about a 3-year period.
It's incredible.
Yeah, really, really quick. And, you know, and we went public, and it was just a really cool experience. Now I was employee 200. And then by the time I left, I think we had like 1,700 people.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I kind of kept getting smaller and smaller, right? Then I went to like the next startup. I was like the second sales hire at Rubrik. Didn't stay there very long, and they're now done fantastic. Until eventually I was like, you know what, I want to try my hand at my own business. And one of the things that really spoke to me was, you know, I always struggled with, right, being like an athlete, right? When you're an athlete, you know this when you played lacrosse, right? It's like, you know, that was your sport, right?
Yeah.
So when you have a singular mission and you get all the guys bought in and gals bought in, it's like you get into sort of a flow state, right? You're like, this works.
It's like you're one with it.
You're like kind of one with it. You're willing to sort of overcome the small setbacks, like you lost, but you're like going to get right back up again. You know, and I felt like if I could give a shout out to Nimble, right? Nimble they just did it right, man. They are like, here, this is our mission, right? We are going to disrupt the storage space, as kind of exciting as that might be. But they did it in such a way that served the customer. And when I think about why I've ever done what I do, it's because of service, right? That's even why I'm at Siverian today. Like, what really mattered to me, whether I was playing football at Lafayette, whether I was doing my painting company, whether it was why I felt like I did well initially at EMC.
Probably why you liked staffing.
Probably why I like staffing too. It's because you're actually helping people.
Right.
Right. And I was at some bigger tech companies that I felt like took advantage of people a little bit. Whereas they were like, we're going to capitalize on helping people and actually truly delivering a product that is going to make someone's life better. I'm like, that's cool. I can get behind that.
Right.
And so when I think about mission, I feel like that all kind of falls into sort of like motivational sciences almost, right?
Yeah.
Because and that kind of prompted me to say, you know, I really want to go deeper into this. And I eventually did. And I started my own coaching business, but it was under the premise of, I feel like we can motivate people better. Like that was like the premise of it, to be honest with you. And then in addition to that, why are some people resilient? How come people can see themselves through challenges? And then how come people can't? And are there ways that we can help? One can help the other, in a way, right? Like,
I mean, that is very impactful work.
Yeah. So to me, it was kind of like, what really makes someone resilient?
What was it?
And
or what did you find?
A lot of it came down to, so there's an awesome book called, I think it's the 10 Factors of Resilience. It's called Resilience, but these doctors, it's, Dr. Southwick, I believe, they did research, right? They were like, why do some people overcome adversity and why don't some people overcome? And they did kind of like really like blind studies, right?
Okay.
So they weren't really so biased. It was more like, hey, how come
they're just overcoming it versus
how come they're overcoming it?
Yeah.
So they had these different factors, but so much of it had to do with values, belief system, et cetera. And so so I felt like, all right, if I'm just like, let's just take technology X, Y, and Z company, and their pure motivation is just profit, right? Which that's always going to be a company's goal. Like you have to profit to be in business.
Or the lights don't stay on.
Or the lights don't stay on, period. But if it was always an outcome-centric goal, meaning we need profit, meaning we need, we can't fail. So you have that. So we need profits, an outcome-specific goal. We can't fail as a negative motivator, right? So now if that's the trickle-down effect and that pervades the whole sort of organization, there was a stronger, I guess you could call it a less likelihood for the population to be engaged in their work because they were not enjoying what they were doing. So there's this whole continuum of motivation that says if it's negatively motivated, the desire to do that work is almost zero.
Right.
Right. So people still, but they slog through it. But everything becomes an outcome at that point. I'm slogging through because I have to pay the bills. Paying the bills is an outcome. I'm slogging through because it's my duty, right? Duty is sort of an outcome in a way. So obligation, duty, et cetera,
Yeah.
right? But your desire, science was showing us that your desire to do that work was not high versus values-based alignment. So I could take any piece of work I was doing, but if I knew why I was doing it from a values perspective, I was more likely to do that work. So the research was showing that that values-based, process-driven motivation was much more effective in motivating people to continue to do their work.
Which does make sense.
Right? Versus like, if you don't do this, you're fired.
Right. Right. Which is
that
like,
scares people.
It does.
You might get like a spurt of energy.
You don't get long-term impact.
No, you don't get long, and then you get
impact.
turnover, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's so, so you parlayed this into your own business.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So I went back, got different certifications on it. And it was really meant to be like an evidence-based resiliency coaching program. And it literally, my first client was a business owner who was about to sell his business and was about to make a ton of money, but he was afraid of who he was going to become. So he's like, my identity's been so wrapped up in what I've been doing, right, for the past 7 years, that's where I'm getting my satisfaction. I'm not necessarily getting my satisfaction from the money.
Right.
I'm getting it from like being known as this business owner, known as a successful entrepreneur. But he was like, I'm terrified of what my identity is going to be now. Is it just going to be like the rich young guy that has no purpose and meaning?
Right.
And so we basically did like a values inventory. We did sort of all these different exercises that gets you to a place that says, this is where I've been, but this is now where I'm going. And it wasn't outcome based. It wasn't kind of like, all right, I'm going to, be a president of another company per se, which is a beautiful thing. It was more, this is who I'm going to be.
Right.
And in being this person, I can point myself here, 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 and here. And no matter where I point myself, I'm comfortable with who I am. So it was putting less onus on what I did and more onus on who I am.
Which I feel like it's more actionable for people to think about, like, what are the behaviors that I'm going to express to represent who I am as a person.
Yeah.
Like, a couple of years ago, I changed the way I did my goal setting. I used to do it a lot of outcome based.
Yeah.
I want to weigh this, right? And now it's like, what are the actions I have to do weekly?
Right.
So it's like, I'm going to call my parents at least every week.
That's nice.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm going to coach my kids' sports.
Yeah.
Like, what are the things that I'm going to do so that when I look back, I'm like, that's who I was.
Yeah.
It's kind of, and so that's,
In essence,
when you
that's
just
what
said
it
that,
is.
it really resonated.
But then
'cause
it
was
produces nice
desired outcomes. Yeah,
Yeah.
it does produce desired outcomes for sure. But it's so much easier to look at it in like week time frames or month time frames than
Yeah.
like this big hairy goal in the future that's outcome based, and you're like, yeah.
Yeah, and I think
That's cool.
I think goals are so healthy and good, but it was more like instead of starting with the outcome, let's start with the behavior, like you're saying. And why are we doing that? And then what outcomes might that produce?
I would definitely say that in my role now, leading this company, and pretty recently, but I would say that the mission values based, like, esprit de corps is definitely one of the more difficult parts of the job.
Oh yeah.
Like trying to understand what's going to resonate, what makes sense, why people want to get up in the morning. It can be daunting. You know, it's like, and we're doing it in bite-sized chunks, but But yeah, hearing you say that, it's like I know it just resonates because right now I know that's some of the work I have to do.
Yeah, I mean, what's very humble
Yeah.
of you to
Well,
say.
I know. I
But
just
even
know
that
it's the
humility,
truth.
but even that
Yeah.
humility is what will kind of work its way through how you lead.
And
right?
and allow the answers to be surfaced.
Exactly,
You know, which is how. So how'd you get sucked back into Severian?
Well, so for me, it was, I'd done the business for 4 years.
Yeah.
It's being a solopreneur is hard, right? So, and
Wear a lot of hats.
Yeah, you have a lot of hats, and so it was. It just felt like it was time to get back to a little bit more sense of normalcy, consistency. And I was blessed. I had the opportunity to stay in touch with people, to get back into sales. And it's interesting just by kind of, I believe divine providence. Literally, I got back into sales a month before COVID hit.
Wow.
Yeah, which is nuts. So if I was still doing my business, it would have been bad news, and it would have been real hard.
Yes.
And so it was just a huge blessing. I kind of went back into it kicking and screaming, but I knew it was the right thing for me at the time. I joined Snowflake and was there for a couple of years. And, it was interesting. I was out for 4 years, right? So you get back into it, right? You kind of have to like restart the engines a little bit. But I was kind of like, all right, I think at the time I was, I don't know, 30, I'm like 41 now, so maybe 37, whatever it was, however old I was when I got back into it. And I was like, all right, I left tech a manager, leading sales. I'm re-entering it a rep. And, so I'm kind of starting over in a way. And so I kind of just did a kind of like discernment. I was like, if I'm going to start over kind of, right? And thankfully I didn't totally start over. It wasn't starting from square one. But if I have to kind of ignite what I'm doing next, I ought to do it in a way that I feel like I can do it for the next 20, 30, 40 years, And if I think about, and I love sales, and I think sales is a vocation. I do. I think it's a great skill set to have. I think people sometimes don't fully appreciate that. I'm like, there's a reason why I think salespeople make a good living, because it's hard.
It is hard.
And you got to be very resilient, and you got to be intelligent, and you have to be savvy, and you have to be creative. Like, there's a lot of things. You have to have a very high emotional quotient, which you can't teach. So I love sales because I think when used for the greater good, and good sales is just fantastic. Just think about the time you've gotten fantastic customer service.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
I've gotten to the point in life where I leave reviews now.
I
had a really good experience on New Year's Eve with my family, and this waiter just kicked it out. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Hit it out of the park.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I have to let people know.
But see, that's cool, man.
I have to let people know because
yeah.
it's just it's the best.
But that's like the salesperson in you too, which I think you need empathy to be a good salesperson.
Yeah, you got to understand.
You have to understand people, kind of appreciate them. So true sales, I think, is just a beautiful vocation.
And especially, I think today, when AI is becoming such a big part of the global workforce, changing jobs.
Yeah.
You can't change. I mean, sales has a bit of a. It's not going to be resilient to AI because AI will change sales, but it won't change human to human interaction.
No, it can't.
It's going to augment.
Yeah. Maybe it can help productivity.
For sure.
In some ways, but you'll never be able to take away the trust factor.
Exactly.
And the ability to have a relationship, and that goes to, and honestly, that's what, for me, I had been in touch with Severian over the years, and it really started with potentially doing a talk at Severian around the topic of resilience.
Okay.
Because I'd done it for all sorts of organizations, like government organizations. One of the last organizations I worked with was the Navy SEAL Foundation, and then even Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts. Like, I was delivering, whether it was one-on-one coaching or workshops. So I was like, maybe Severian could bring in this type of curriculum, and I'd love to help them get it off the ground. I feel like this could be useful for the guys. That's kind of how it started. And then my close friend and now boss, Chris Vasta, he had just taken over Advancement. And he's like, well, what about Advancement? And at first I'm like, I don't know about that, And I'm like, I just got back into sales.
Yeah.
Like, this is a good time, And but then we just kind of kept at it. And then I did eventually go talk at the school. I gave a talk, and Chris was like, hey, Jake, he's the head of school, would love to talk to you. And Jake's just such an incredible guy, and so it's great. I mean, everyone there, we had to basically take over from the brothers leading the school.
Right.
So there's, you're kind of reestablishing like the leadership of the school,
Yes.
which was before religious and now it's lay people. And, Jake had the courage to kind of think differently. He was kind of like, you know what? I really like the fact that you've done business and you've done sales and you've had your own thing, and then you can bring that strategy mindset to help us. And I was like, that sounds awesome. It was just such a good fit, such good alignment, timing. And then it kind of took, but it was like a 2-year conversation. It was not like immediate, but I was like, you know what, this is really neat. And I have 2 sons. Henry, God willing, will be there next year, and then Luke's a couple years behind him. And I'm just like, you know what? How cool is that? I get to work at somewhere I love, a mission I care about, in a place that I actually might even be able to see my kids every day.
Yeah, it's
while I work.
crazy.
It's pretty cool.
It's very crazy.
But it's just, when you do what you love, it doesn't feel like work. You know what I mean?
True.
Like I love talking to you right now. I can go talk to anyone that went to Xaverian.
Yes.
And we can talk forever. We're already like probably going over time. But
It's so funny how
but it's just true, man.
It is.
And I think if I look back, if I can connect the dots for you in a way, the one thing that's always spoke to me was, you said it earlier. I think we were saying before, like sometimes parents might be like, "Hey, what are you doing?
Yes.
What's your calling?"
Yes.
And I think sometimes we're expected to know what that is, like really early in life. But sometimes it's not ready for you,
And you need experiences to help define it. And that was the inspiration for the podcast. It was like,
Exactly.
I had one parent that was a little more laissez-faire, like, you're going to figure it out, don't worry. And one parent that was like, what are you going to be when you grow up?
Right.
From 18 on.
Right.
And I think the school system, not Xaverian itself, but I think schools in general are trying to shape kids towards paths to have good outcomes.
Right.
I mean, I don't think they're doing it. They're doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They want to help people find what they should be.
Right.
But I think that almost creates a fear in a young person.
Right.
That's like, I don't know. I don't really know what I want to be. And I can't tell you the scores of people I've met in their 50s, 60s, and 70s that found their love for their vocation at 45, 50, 55. And now they're so happy, and they're grateful for the experiences previous to it.
Yes.
And I was like, if I can just document that, and people can listen to that and gain some strength to be like, whatever path I'm on today is the correct one. Be patient and be aware. I think you got to be, like in your story, very aware of your skill set.
Yeah.
Very aware of what you're good at, what you don't like.
Yes.
Why things are working for you.
Exactly.
And I think that helps you when you probably at the end of that
work.
2-year Xaverian conversation, you probably get to the point where you're like, this is all lining up.
Exactly.
I can see it in your eyes when you're sharing the story. It's like, okay, this is like hits at a visceral level.
It's like, hey, all that experience now, and it's like I can bring that to something I really love, and also make a healthy living and do well and take care of my family, and I think you have to be willing to identify what's the most important thing for you, and so for me, it's like, what's the most important thing? I gotta believe in what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But then next to there is what's kind of my gifts and talents, what's my vocation, and I can put that towards really anything.
Right.
And I felt like for me, once I understood that part of my vocation was sales and relationship building, and that's kind of what I was gifted with, if you will. Not that I'm the best at it, but that's kind of where I've been.
Yeah.
That I'm like, wow, I can really use this for something meaningful. And whether we like it or not, like having that meaning is important in our work. But I will say you can create it no matter where you are. I really do believe that.
Well, Viktor Frankl showed you that.
Absolutely.
I mean that.
If my path kept me like legitimately in a tech sales job,
yes,
no question I'd be creating purpose and meaning because I'm serving customers.
Yes.
It's how I approach my work that gives me my purpose and meaning.
Right.
It's not my work itself. And I think like once I kind of knew that, I was like, all right, I'm good.
The owner of our company has been a mentor for, I guess, 15 years now. But years back, he was like, honestly, it doesn't matter if we were selling pencils. That's what he would say. He goes, the work is the work. And it took me a while to really understand it. I understood what he meant by that. I mean, like, business is business. It's about engaging your staff.
Right.
Yada, yada, yada. But now I really get it. It's like, you're just applying what you're really good at.
Yeah.
surrounding yourselves with people that are better at the things you're not good at.
Yeah.
And then having a core mission to attack things with.
Amen,
together.
man.
It's like I could work at, and it's.
And in your case, serving your employees. Right?
Yeah, that's my job.
Yeah.
That is my
you
job.
serve
day
the
in and day out.
employees.
Yes.
And you're going to do your best, and sometimes it's easy, and sometimes people are happy, they're not happy, and sometimes you can't make everybody happy type of thing. But
Yes.
but at least you're like, that speaks to me. I know I'm supposed to serve, and that keeps you going.
And it's been I think it's been a cool, the evolution of what leadership even means.
Right.
Because for me, it was, you're captain of a sports team and growing up in high school or even in college, there are leadership qualities there.
Right.
But a lot of times it has to be like leading by example, most vocal person, probably in the top 10% of the skill set on the team, something of that. And I don't think I would have included service in my leadership definition, it may be in high school or in college. Not
Right.
because I was like unaware of it. I think ultimately it probably goes back to the point you said earlier where it's like when you're so mission focused, the little stuff doesn't bother you.
Right.
Which probably was service to a degree in that time.
Yeah, sure.
But like now my whole life is like service.
Yeah,
it's like I serve
your family.
my family. Exactly. It's like everything I do is in service of something. But I think when you make that realization, it also helps you understand what's going to bring you fulfillment and what is a good day and what's a bad day. What used to be a good day was, did I close a deal? Right? And am I going to bring money home? And now it's like, fulfillment is like watching your child develop over the course of a couple weeks.
Yeah.
In some particular skill. Or
Absolutely.
seeing someone in the company buy a house.
Right.
And you go, man, they did that because we had our act together.
Yeah.
Like that. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, how can I help this person keep moving forward?
Absolutely. It's amazing too. You talk about philosophy earlier in the chat, and just, life has a funny way of teaching you, right? Like what's the most important thing, right?
Yes, it does.
And what's interesting that I had a grocery shop yesterday, and I was just kind of walking around, and I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, and there was actually a picture. It was a picture of, I think I walked by like an Apple store, and it was a picture, like in the background was a picture, like a very serene picture, and it was like the sun setting over like this mountain or whatever. And I was just like, it was a very like weird moment, but I was like, I don't want that. Life has taught me that peace for me is actually loving through service, loving through sacrifice, loving through getting up every day and just doing the best I can.
Yes.
Like that's my serenity. Loving, Sarah, Henry, and Luke, loving how I approach my life, learning how to forgive, learning to be forgiven. To me, life wasn't designed to always be on the beach. You know what I mean? And I had to come to realize, there's this like lie that kind of pervades. It's like, here's the serene background. If I just could get to the ocean, if I could just get to the woods. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy them.
Yes.
When I'm there.
Right.
But I don't need to be there anymore.
But it's not the destination.
It's not the destination. It's like, well, how can I live day to day? And that satisfaction is what gives me my serenity.
It makes a ton. I always joke. I think I always say out of both sides of my mouth, I don't understand how I'll ever retire because I don't understand how I would do in that world. But on the flip side, I know I'd be an awesome retired person. I freaking love golf and I love boring mornings. So I'd be so good at that.
I'm good with boring mornings
right?
too,
Like,
man. Yeah,
I
they're
love
great.
puttering around,
Yeah.
as Bezos would say. But yeah, I know I'm with you. Like I think that when I think about the last year, my wife launched a couple businesses in the last 18 months.
Oh, wow.
And to be honest, like that's been probably one of the more fulfilling things. It's like, all right, now I can help her because I couldn't have done my career. Like there's no way I'd be sitting in the seat I'm sitting in without just the sacrifices she made when our kids were young.
Oh, yeah.
I gotta travel.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And now it's like we're in a position where I get to pay it back a little bit. It's like, oh, this rules. This rules. She's like, I got to be at this thing. I'm like, no worries. I'm going to scoot out of work early. And I fortunately gave myself enough political capital here to be able to take a call from home or whatever. But
exactly.
I'm with you. It's not unicorns and rainbows aren't worth chasing.
The good. You got to find a way to have peace with the ups and the downs.
And I
It's
think
not
you
all
need
up
to
and it's not all down.
I think what I'm finding in my own journey is the difficult nature of keeping that in front of me all the time.
Yeah.
Because at times when you're down or you're up, you can easily drink your own Kool-Aid and start to self-pity wallow.
Yeah.
The gym, I would say, for me has been the number one way I remind myself, like, do hard things. But, like, do hard things. This feels good.
Yeah.
You go into the gym feeling like shit. You walk out feeling like $1 million. And it's like, okay, that is like a wonderful metaphor for life.
You bring up a good point, though. I mean, it's important to continue to challenge yourself.
Yes.
You have to, when life can get heavy and hard sometimes, but I always see it as it's molding you to make it a better you.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. And some days it's really easy to get up out of bed and go there, and other days you're like, no, again and again. I gotta get up again.
I love working out, but I have to admit, this morning I woke up, I'm like, I think I'm just going to stretch this.
Yeah, sometimes I mean, and sometimes you got to pay attention and be like, I gotta call this one out. But like, I'm in I would say the last 3 months, I ran the marathon earlier last year.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And I would say the hangover from that.
Oh yeah.
The hangover from that.
Yeah.
Of like wanting no mission, like having the mission of running the marathon.
Yeah.
To having no athletic goals.
Yeah.
Was like. I was like out of whack.
Yeah.
And I had this 5-year routine of waking up and going to the gym every morning, and now it was like I had to kickstart it again.
Yeah.
And I would still say, what I'm almost a year post, I'd still say, like, I wake up some days, I'm like, God, what am I doing?
Oh, yeah.
Like, and I just drag myself there. And the discipline
But you're better
works.
for it.
It is. It
You
is. I will say, I have one topic. I could talk to you for hours.
Yeah.
But because of your role and your faith, I thought it'd be an interesting thing to riff on. But I would say that in the last, first of all, I'd like a disclaimer. I'm not very good at pop culture or current events other than like, geopolitical type stuff. But I don't watch TV. I'm just not good at that kind of stuff.
I'm with you.
I watch the Bruins and youth hockey for my boys. Those are the sports I get to watch. But it does feel to me, based on conversations I have with my friends, and I don't know if it's my bubble, and obviously your network is very faith-based based on the relationship you have, but it kind of feels like our country, and I think this is a very positive thing, but it's kind of going through a cultural revolution where religion is certainly becoming more prominent than I think it was 10 years ago. I mean, we both grew up in the midst of the Catholic Church crisis.
Right.
Right. And that really affected my parents' faith, my mom's faith in particular. I was at Severian at the time.
Yeah.
But I talked to my mom last week and she was like leaving church. So like she's back.
Yeah.
I've just noticed with my friends groups and things I read, the podcasts I listen to, we riffed on a couple podcasters we both like before the show.
Right.
There's been more religious, spiritual conversation on those mediums than I think in the previous 3 years I listened to them.
Right.
Do you see any of that?
Well, I mean,
it's in your face every day.
it's in my face every day for
Right.
sure.
Right.
I would say that, if I may, I'll just kind of
let it
I'll
rip.
just brain
Let it
dump,
rip.
I think, when we founded America as one nation under God,
Right.
right? It was built with, at the time, Christian values.
Yeah, Judeo-Christian, I
Right.
would say, right?
And but I think ultimately, I don't know which amendment or what, I'm not the most.
Yeah.
But every human's, what is it? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Right.
So and freedom of religion.
Yes.
Right. So even though it was built on Judeo-Christian principles,
Yes.
there was still a freedom of religion, which is a Christian mentality, actually, right? 'Cause,
It is, yes.
Even in my case, Jesus met people where they were at. He wasn't like, you must be this already. It was, whatever you are, I'm just here to love you. And so, I think when people look at the last 5, 10, 15 years, I think there's been a breakdown and erosion of trust with kind of establishment.
Yep,
in a way,
institutions,
right?
agreed.
Institutions and whatnot. And I think, you and I have lived through, when we were kids, there was no iPhone, there was no internet, there was
Right.
no ease. Like, I'm looking out the window, there's Starbucks. Like, we have everything at our fingertips now. So I think we came from a time when, luxuries weren't so accessible. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
was like, you know, you enjoyed maybe Sunday dinner that mom made, and it was like mashed potatoes and
Yeah.
chicken, but you weren't always picking up like the gourmet chicken wings from, you know, this chicken wing place that makes it on like a wood-fired grill and whatever.
Right.
You know, I think it's just we
got spoiled.
we got spoiled, and we got this access to so much like privilege.
Mm-hmm.
But I think through that, and with the erosion and the crisis of the church, people kind of turned away from what is a very fundamental piece of the human being, which is the spiritual component.
Mm-hmm.
And I studied anthropology and sociology in college, and no matter the primitive culture, right, they always, even before, you know, religion spread throughout the world, especially the Abrahamic religions, right, Christianity, Judaism, and Muslim, or and so before those had spread throughout the world, there was a primitive calling to something greater than themselves. Like it was primitive.
Right.
So there was always, whether they had worshipped the sun or whatever they did, right? It was, they at least understood intuitively that there was this component to themselves that was not just physical, right?
Yes.
And that they strived to feed that component of themselves through their form of prayer at the time, right? Now you fast forward, like we haven't changed in 20 years. We're still human beings, right? And, you know, for me being a Catholic man, you know, I believe that we're all built in the image and likeness of God, which means that we can't be separate from the thing that created us, or we can't be separate from the world we live in. Like it's all intertwined. So where I'm going with this all is, I think, you know, you look at people where luxury and everything was at our fingertips. You know, you could search anything you wanted, whatever. And then it kind of ran its course, and you're still left with a void. You know, you're still left with like, why don't I have peace? Like, why don't I have understanding, right?
Or meaning.
Or meaning
Right.
and purpose. And, you know, you see Jordan Peterson like wrestle with it, right? And he's coming to conclusions along the way of, you know, there's got to be some, like I'm concluding through my, you know, psychological analysis. But I think it's because, you know, if I may, the Holy Spirit's so much stronger than we are, right? And you know, and it's also, if I may, they call Jesus the bloodhound of heaven. And what's that mean? It means that just because we walk away,
Right.
God doesn't.
Yes.
God doesn't walk away.
And I feel like at scale,
Yeah.
obviously I wasn't around 60, 70 years ago.
Right.
But those were high American values.
Exactly.
And then I think we figured out that capitalism was a great game to play for the benefit of our family.
Right.
But I think around the time we were in middle school, high school, capitalism became religion.
Yep.
In America.
Right.
And it feels to me like we're at a point now where most people are waking up to like, I can play this capitalism game and it's fine, and I need a job and I got to provide for my family.
Yeah.
But I can't. But if I do it without the real meaning of my life working in congruency with my vocation,
Right.
then I'm gonna end up being like, damn, I missed out on this crazy trip called life.
Yeah.
That's like my current analysis of where we stand today, because it just feels like there's
It's too empty the other side.
It's way too empty, and people are going, people have had enough life experience now, and I think it's our generation, right? People in their 40s are going, it's about a little more than, you know, having children helps, right? We're at the age where people are starting families, and you really start to ponder,
Right.
well, how is that person going to turn out?
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting. Like my dad, right? He's a deacon now.
Okay.
When he graduated high school, he went into the Navy. Then he went to the Marines. He became a force recon in the Marines, which is special forces. Went to Vietnam, came home, got a job, you know, and then kind of worked his way up. He had actually worked at CVS, and once we moved out here, but he never lost his faith. And I remember, you know, we went to church every week, and I'm like, Dad's strong, Dad's disciplined, Dad's got a lot of gifts and talents, and he would be the first to say, I'm nothing without God.
Right.
And he was an executive, right? And that always spoke to me, because I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. Like, you know, if I reflect on my own life, when the church crisis hit, I actually kind of backed away myself.
Yeah.
And then
same.
you try to like do everything on your own,
Yeah.
until finally things start kind of like breaking around you. You're like, what's going on? Like, and it wasn't until I turned back to prayer
Yeah.
that it started to kind of be put back together. And there's a beautiful piece of scripture that I think most faiths could share, and especially the Abrahamic faiths. It's Job, who's Old Testament. And basically Job was wealthy beyond measure, had like thousands of cattle, pigs, and whatever. And the evil spirit came and said, I'm going to make Job hate God. I'm going to make him hate God, right? And so the evil spirit asked God, let me test Job. Let me see if he'll hate you. And God says, I'll grant you your wish. I'll let you see if you can make him hate me. And so Job lost everything. It all kind of got ruined, right? And finally, Job lost it all. And then he says, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Wow. And he defeated the enemy because of his attitude towards God. What did God do? Job ends with God blessing him double than what he had before. Because God said, you were a faithful servant.
Right.
So God wants abundance. He wants greatness. But more than anything, he wants a relationship with us.
Yes.
And when you think of Job and you think about, like I think of my own life from when I turned back to God and where I am today, I'm like so doubly blessed because of, I have that peace now because I have God in my life.
And I don't even,
know what I
even
mean?
if your blessings aren't quantifiable,
No,
you're
it's just
aware
your
of
peace
them.
of mind.
You're aware of them.
You're aware of them. You're aware
Yeah.
that I'm aware that I need strength from God.
Yeah.
I am a grown man who's had a near-death experience. I was captain of two football teams, high school, college. Right. I don't care what you call it.
Right.
I came to a point in my life that I recognized that I am not strong without the grace of God.
I appreciate you sharing that. That's very vulnerable of you, but I also I completely agree. And what the tipping point for me was in my path to this leadership role in our organization. I've always been better at watching game film than
Yeah.
or mimicking people. Like in athletics, like if I saw someone do something, it was way easier than if it was explained to me verbally and then I had to go do it.
Yeah,
like you gotta
yeah.
draw it on a whiteboard for me.
Yeah, I'm experiential.
Yes, same.
Yeah.
And so I knew that was how I got better at athletics. And so I've always applied that to how I learn for business, right? Like who are my role models? Who am I looking up to? And knowing that I was going to be leading the organization, I was like, I have to, like, who am I going to emulate?
Yeah.
And then, so as I went through that process,
Right.
it was interesting. My favorite business leaders, the people I wanted to emulate, all had very strong faiths. And I recognized how weak mine was.
Interesting.
And there was always like it had started a couple years ago, but in the last like 2 years, it's been like a tidal. I mean, I got a long way to go. I'm not gonna, it's a journey.
No,
obviously,
there's no perfection.
100%, but it's worth trying.
Someone
it.
said there's the only perfect man that's ever lived died 2,000 years
Right.
ago.
That's which is a good way of living.
We're just called to strive.
But I guess my point is, I think living up to my potential of what I think I can do,
which happens through the grace of God.
Exactly. So it's been a fun journey back, if you will.
You're a good man.
Which is funny because I wish 14-year-old Mark could have seen that. Like
Yeah, but you wouldn't. And same in my case. I don't think you would. Again, in Job's case, he didn't know what he had. Like,
right. You got to go through it.
You got to go through it. You got to go through what they call the dark night a little bit,
Yes.
where you're like on your own. You're standing on an island, and you're like, this stinks.
Yes.
And then you turn back and you're like, wow, through that experience, I now know God's real.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are like, how do you know he's real? I'm like, I just do.
Yeah.
Like through that experience, through
Right.
that sort of being at sort of a really low point to then God lifting me up, like giving me the strength. And then not even just that, but dusting you off and making you like even better than you were before.
Mm-hmm.
I can't explain that. That's not
powerful.
me.
It's powerful.
I was at a low point, right? Like
Yeah.
I had tried, and that's where it led me on my own. Like, okay, like, so what's getting me?
Where do I go from here? Where do I go from here?
Right.
Dude, I told you we could talk for 3 hours.
I know, man.
But I really appreciate you coming on. You're such a wonderful representation of the Savarian community, too.
Oh, thanks,
so
Mark. I appreciate
I
it.
do appreciate you carving out some time for us.
I'm so proud of you, honestly. It's just, you know, we're so blessed as a school and as a community to see people like you doing what you're doing. And I mean that, you know. And
thank you.
We have people like guys like you living in the world, being good men, striving. We're not called to perfection. We're just called to strive.
Trying our best.
Trying our best.
Trying our best.
So,
well, I owe a lot to
thank
that
you,
place
brother.
for the carving of me. So thank you so much.
We all do.
Appreciate it.
See you, man.
Awesome.